the Holy Scriptures has historically been interpreted as the Bible. Well, some folks are beginning to argue that you should be able to swear on the book of your choice. Why would they make that argument besides freedom of religion and First Amendment? What's the rationale behind it?
Supporting only the Bible?
That's the First Amendment article, or argument. What would be the reason, practical reason why you should swear on your own book?
Telling the truth and it means something to you.
Your own book is going to mean something more to you, so you would be more likely to tell the truth on that. Whereas if you swore on somebody else's book, you likely would not have the same motivation. Absolutely, as far as that's concerned. So, that was swearing on the Quran. At this point, they still haven't changed it. All you can do in Carolina is swear on the Holy Scriptures. We'll see how long that goes. And one of the arguments that Carolina had raised was, if you allow people to swear on their sacred symbols, you could have people swearing on live chickens, dead chickens, fried chickens. I mean, when you really sit down and think about it, where actually does it stop? How many symbols or books would we have to have? And then the taco stand was pretty straightforward. It was another one that was an example of polity when you think about it. Let me jump to chapter 3 with ideology. And when you look at this chapter, and I'll just go back to the terms. With ideology, all of you, I posted the results of the belief quiz again. So regardless of which class you're in, I've got up here belief quiz results. And this is there for everybody. And I put the original chart up there. And I went through liberal, I went through conservative, I went through populist and libertarian. I also added in there communist, I added anarchist, I added Nazi, and I added dictator. Yeah. In your class, Melissa, you are the one that's most likely to be the dictator. And I forget about the 11 o'clock class, but as you watch the video, it'll probably take about 10 minutes. Pay good attention to that, because some of you have got some really crazy beliefs. And if I call you out and say, well, if you get a test question that says, who's most likely to be the dictator in your class? I mean, the 11 o'clock was you. The 9:30 only had one, which was Bianca. That's right. But maybe there are some other crazy things in there. Again, looking at the people that were furthest away on that. So take a good look at those. Let me focus on the articles for this chapter, though, because I don't want to go too far as time is concerned, but I do want to make sure that we get a good look at these. As far as these articles are concerned, do you have any questions about any of the articles? You remember the basketball one?
The Obama. Yeah, the Obama.
Yeah, the Obama one. What was that one about?
He was playing basketball.
Women were angry that he plays basketball with
only guys.
Only guys. Only male members of Congress, only male members of the executive branch. And there's an argument that this could lead to favoritism. In fact, this could lead to sexism. In fact, if I'm playing basketball with my boss and Amanda isn't, then in fact, I probably have an advantage that she doesn't have because I've got a social interaction. What did people argue would counteract that? What would people argue that said that it's clear that Obama is not sexist?
Oh, women in the cabinet. Like
More women in the cabinet.
He's appointed more women in influential federal positions, and it mentions his wife, it mentions Hillary Clinton. You can look at Supreme Court appointments. You could go on and on and on with this. So with this in mind, Obama has got a clear record there, but some folks would say, and this was an example dealing with feminism. This was an example that was dealing with feminism. 11 o'clock class, y'all had the Hugs article, but 9:30 didn't. What was Hugs? 11 o'clock?
Regulation of hugs.
What's that?
Regulation of hugs in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, the New Jersey schools had decided that they wanted to ban hugs. They wanted to ban hugs, if you'll remember on this. And what was the reason why? What did they say?
Because hugs were causing sexual harassment.
They were saying, actually, they tried to come up with some real reasons, and the real reasons were basically dealing with it's clogging the halls, it's keeping people from getting to class on time, people are hugging uncontrollably, all of these other things like they hadn't seen each other in forever. Ostensibly, though, this was dealing with sexual harassment and potential lawsuits. So with this in mind, there's some issues there. And New Jersey is basically saying, we want this no hug policy. Why? Because if we have a policy and then kids do these things, you can't sue us. We were trying to make sure that this didn't happen. 11 o'clock, y'all were really against this law, right?
Yes.
Why? Was that you? Go ahead, Angie, why?
Because it's a way to express our
It's a way to express feelings. It's a form of a greeting. It's cozy or comfortable that young people feel good expressing themselves. And these weren't sexual, groping kinds. I mean, there was the bear claw or whatever the hell that thing was. I mean, some of those things sounded a little bit off, but in the grand scheme of things, it was just a calm expression. Hugs, if you remember, was an example of liberal, conservative, libertarian, or populist.
Liberal.
Populist, because populists believe that government needs to regulate for people because people cannot make decisions on their own. And if you remember with the Hugs article, we were dealing specifically with people that couldn't make decisions on their own, being young teenagers. 930 class, y'all had the sex offender article. Do you remember the sex offender article with Wolfhawk?
Yeah.
What was Wolfhawk?
He was like a convicted double rapist back in the, but like it had been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then he had a baby in, what was it, Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth.
Wanted to take the child away from him.
Yes, that's right. Wolfhawk was a convicted double murderer, and in fact, I think when he had done it, he was about 30, and these were minor girls. So these were 15, 16-year-old type girls. Now, with this in mind, Wolfhawk straightened up. He was released from prison. The best we can tell, he had been clean for decades, and then what ended up happening, he fathered a child. Commonwealth came in and they took the child away, if you remember on this. And they took it away because of his past. Okay, when you think about this, what argument did we have in 930 about Wolfhawk?
On which side?
Either side. What argument did we
One
have?
side said that since he had done it before, like he couldn't be cured and he may do it again.
That's a high recidivism crime, sexual assault charges are. Go ahead.
And then the other one was saying he's been clean for 20 years. You don't know the circumstance of his conviction. You don't know exactly what happened. And if he's been clean for 20 years, it hasn't, I mean, the likelihood of recidivism after 40 years old is extremely low.
It seems like if he's this big of a danger, in fact, then you know what? We just need to, he should have never gotten out of jail in the first place. But in fact, ultimately, the state did not ever give him back. And populists would basically say, when you look at this, okay, we're looking out for somebody that cannot look out for him or herself, and this, in this instance, is going to be this infant baby, because if something were to happen to this baby, we in the state are going to look horrible about this, so we need to make sure, absolute sure, that nothing happens. Bottom line on this. The third article that both of you had was TT. Who was TT? TT was the AIDS-infected, HIV-infected prostitute. Go ahead, Amanda. You seem to know a little bit about her.
What do you want me to say?
Whatever you need to say, because you were the one that started yelling it out.
But it was a prostitute with AIDS, and what Texas wanted to do was...
What was the problem? What did she do?
She was, not telling her clients that she had it.
So she just didn't, and she had sex with them
Yes.
too. Yeah, let's make sure we're clear on this. Basically, it got sent back to her that in fact that she had infected somebody and she was not telling them that she was HIV positive. What was it that the folks in Amarillo, Texas wanted to do to TT?
They wanted to put her in treatment.
Okay, where? Where did they? Yeah, they wanted to lock her up, and then they wanted to force her against her will to have treatment on this. Now, this was a big debate as far as whether we should allow this or not. Why would you say that the state should be allowed to do this? Anybody?
Because she's affecting the citizens.
And in fact, if your husband went and saw TT, and then ultimately got infected, and then came back and infected you, you had not done anything wrong, but you are now going to be at risk because of the things that she's doing. Innocent people are going to be affected by this. What's the argument that says the state doesn't have the right to do this?
Her body.
It's her body, and in fact, you shouldn't violate this. What would the taxpayer likely say about this?
We don't want to pay for the treatment.
We don't want to pay for the treatment. We do not want to be responsible for cleaning up her irresponsible decision-making and lifestyle. Of course, if you're the state and you take her in, you're responsible for her and everybody else that's in that prison, which would seem to suggest that you're going to have to provide more than what you would for a quote-unquote regular inmate when you put it in that regard. Ultimately, they said, yes, we can force her to do this because she had been breaking this covenant, to suggest that she was going to tell people that she was infected multiple times. She had been locked up for this. Those were the populist articles. Inez. If basketball was dealing with feminism, so was Inez. What was Inez's story?
The Jets.
What about this?
She was the Mexican reporter?
Yes.
Who came to the Jets practice, and she was wearing really scandalous clothes, you'd say, and she went to.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I appreciated your wardrobe.
Okay, she was wearing non-classy. She wasn't dressed appropriately.
She was not dressed professionally, is the word. She had shown up in jeans that were basically tighted on, or she showed up in jeans that were basically painted on, so they were very, very snug. She also had a very, I know you don't have to ask this. Okay, she was also wearing this white tank top that kind of showed some belly and showed an awful lot of skin up top. And what was probably worse is that the woman had 3 kids, and she was absolutely banging. I mean, when you check out the pictures on this, I'm not trying to be sexist. It's okay, Andy. But no, I'm not. I'm just being real. Now, with this in mind, what ended up happening with this? Basically, what did they do?
Jets lob football at her.
They lobbed footballs at her, just like the Corona commercial that I had shown both classes. Keep going, and what else?
And they made like a bunch of cat calls, and then when she was in the locker room, I forget what they did, but
They got really graphic in the locker room. So you could maybe say that they were being a little flirty and a little playful on the field. When it got into the locker room and people weren't all dressed and then they got a little bit more defiant with her, that's a lot worse. Of course, she was so upset, she tweeted in the Jets locker room that she was upset, which again would seem to suggest other issues. Well, when you look at this, what was the debate? And the 9:30 class primarily blamed Inez, as I recall. No, it was the other way. The 11 o'clock class primarily blamed Inez. So I believe it was like 70% of the 9:30 said the Jets were idiots. 80% of the 11 o'clock class said Inez made the mistake. So y'all were almost equally divided if you put it together, but it was very different results. What were the arguments as far as the way that she should go in there and be dressed?
more professional. Like,
She should be more professional. Why?
just because if you want to be taken it seriously as a reporter, you should be dressed. You have to be dressed the part of the profession that you want to be practicing.
That's right. It was Ashley Fox. And what was interesting in the article Inez analysis, a lot of women really dogged Inez and said, you got 3 rules. Ask credible questions. Don't flirt and dress professional. And if you violate these rules, you are basically going to make yourself look bad, but you're going to make all of us women look bad. Others brought up the Keith Olbermann and Rush Limbaugh. And this is what some people say about rape victims. I want to be careful with this. But basically, they say in there, if you dress a certain way, you're asking for a certain kind of attention, you're asking for a certain kind of... Now, I'm not condoning that, but I'm saying that was the other argument that was raised in this. So, effectively, you had some of these male commentators and some of these women commentators agreeing that Inez was inappropriate, but then they're doing it for completely different reasons. The other piece to this, if you think back to it, was some folks say, hey, it doesn't matter how a woman dresses. If she dresses too nice, she's going to be considered giving off the wrong image. And if she dresses too frumpy or conservative, she's going to be considered giving off the wrong image anyway. And the idea is that women can't dress for anybody. And I believe I had mentioned to you in class, women dress for other women. And oftentimes that's where maybe some of the sharpest criticism comes from. Again, these aren't absolute statements, but understand this was one of the debates with her conduct, how she should have dressed. A number of you said, I should dress the way that I want, and in fact, I should not be subject to her harassing types of comments or actions because of the way that I'm dressed. And in fact, that's an absolutely valid point too. Purging gender. What was purging gender?
The hen.
The hen. What was the hen? What country was this?
Sweden.
Sweden. It was Sweden. And what were they doing in Sweden? Anybody?
They were trying to make the not male or female, just a single sex.
They're basically saying, and one of the things, the quotes that I had read you from the feminist part of the chapter, if you remember, was basically talking about, okay, there are certain gender roles. And I think in both of the classes I had asked y'all, if you, your girlfriend put on one of your button-down shirts, would you like that? And everybody seemed to like that were the guys. And then in fact I asked you if your girlfriend had a shirt that would fit you, would you wear it? And many people, especially Lewis, oh no, I mean, in the 11 o'clock class he was very angry about this. Gender roles. There are certain toys that boys play with and they're not supposed to play with. Certain toys that girls play with and certain that they're not supposed to. Certain colors that you're supposed to wear or not wear. Again, dealing with gender